Chapter 9. Where are the bones of St. Andral? "Who's Vasilka?" Ireena asked Henry in the morning. Henry, Ireena, and Rowan were seated at a table in the tap room. Henry heaped another spoonful of porridge into his mouth. The two women both leaned in, expecting an answer. The Blue Water Inn was peaceful, and Henry did not want to sour it by telling them about his most recent nightmare. "I heard you say that name last night, too," Rowan said, nibbling on a piece of barley bread. Henry swallowed. "I don't know who she is, but in the dream I was—" Henry was about to shovel another spoonful into his mouth, but stopped. "In my dreams, I'm always this man with a deep voice. I don't know who he is, but he tortures people. One of them is a girl named Vasilka." "That's awful," Ireena said, setting a spoon down in her empty bowl. The door to the inn burst open, and a mousy-faced boy came barreling into the tap room as though he were on a mission. They recognized him as one of the orphans from Miss St. Andral's. "Hello, Mr. Henry, sir," he said. "Father Lucian wants to see you right away, sir, if you're able." "I'll be there," Henry said, standing up. The boy left in a hurry. "Do you think it's about the church not being consecrated?" Ireena asked, getting to her feet and putting on her cloak. "We won't know until we get there," Henry said. "By the way, where's Navara?" "She has guard duty," Rowan said, staying in her seat. "Are you coming, Whiskers?" Henry asked. "You two go ahead. I'd like to go see Van Richten this morning. He said he's going to be leaving Vallaki soon, and I'd like to talk with him one more time." "Where's he going?" Henry asked. "To an old tower west of town. I don't know much about it yet, which is partly why I want to talk with him." Henry nodded. "Well, I don't know how long we'll be at the church, but how about we meet back here for dinner?" Ireena and Rowan agreed, and they parted ways. "I still can't believe I was adopted." Ireena walked with Henry down the cobblestone street. The mists lingered in town, just like they had in the forest. "I was truly happy with my family, with Ismark and father, God rest his soul. I am happy, but still, I wonder who my other family were. Where did I come from? I suppose I'll never know." "Did I ever tell you the people in my hometown thought I was a bastard?" Henry asked. "No, you didn't." "They called me Bastard, like that was my name. I don't think they meant to be mean. They just said it because they thought it was a fact. The truth is, I look nothing like my parents. My mother swore up and down that I was her flesh and blood, that she'd only ever been with my father. But as I grew taller than my short parents, and sprouted hair much darker than theirs, I'd look at my own reflection, with brown eyes like no one else in my family, and I wondered too. Nothing about me resembles the slightest hint of my mother or father. Still, they were the best parents to me." "Well," said Ireena, folding her hands together, "I had been looking forward to complimenting your parents by remarking on your similar good looks. I just assumed. But there are more important things to applaud a parent for, such as the upbringing of a good character." She smiled at Henry. "I also know it takes more than kind parents for a boy to become a good man. Each of us chooses who we are in the end." Henry could only dream for such an end, one where he held the keys to his own destiny. "I'd like to be a fisherman," he said. "If I could go anywhere in the world, do anything I liked, I'd live like my father, out on the water, with a good boat, good nets, and a small house to call my own. That would be the life." "Sounds nice. The only thing I would add is the sun. Good weather. I've read in books there are places where the sun shines 9 days out of 10. Places where it's so hot, people get burnt by it. Ireena turned her face toward the cloudy sky, as though basking in the sun's rays. I would gladly get burnt every day if I left Barovia. It's pretty sunny in Blackford. Blackford sounds wonderful. They reached the church where Father Lucian stood waiting on the front step. I'm glad you're here, the priest said in an anxious tone, beckoning them into the building. I've discovered why this place is no longer consecrated. It's the bones of St. Andral. They've gone missing. Where were they seen last? Henry asked, stepping into the church with Ireena. In the crypt under the chancel where they've always been. The bones of our patron saint were the only power that protected this church. Without them... The father shook his head. Do you think someone took them? Henry asked. There's only one other person who knew where the bones were, the altar boy Jeska. When I asked him about it, he said he didn't know. But he became fidgety and didn't want to look me in the eye. Could I talk with him? He's right over there. Father Lucian pointed to a tawny-haired boy who was sweeping the floor at the front of the sanctuary. When Jeska saw them coming toward him, his knees began to shake. Jeska, the father said gently, do you remember meeting Sir Henry and Lady Ireena, the kind people who helped Lucian, Myrtle, and Freak? Jeska nodded and swallowed. They'd like to ask you a few questions, the father said. If it's about the bones, I don't know where they went, the boy stammered. Do you know who might have taken them? Henry asked, kneeling down so he was on the boy's level. Jeska's lips tightened into a thin line, and a bead of sweat formed on his temple. Henry looked around the room and saw a few tired children watching them. Then he looked back to the frightened boy and the troubled father. Henry stood up and did something he hadn't done in a long time. He revealed his wings. A brilliant halo encircled his body as the luminous feathers unfolded from his back, lifting him off the ground. It had been a while since he'd practiced, but flying came naturally to him. Jeska fell to his knees, and a sense of reverence filled the sanctuary as everyone in the room gazed on the angelic apparition with awe. It's all right, Jeska, Henry said, hovering a few feet above the floor. You don't need to be afraid. You can tell us what you know, and the Morning Lord will understand. Please, Jeska said, looking up. I didn't mean for them to be stolen. Honest. I was asked by Milivoj, an older boy. He wanted to know where the bones were. He was just asking me about them one day, and I let it slip. I never thought Milivoj would steal them. I believe you, Jeska. Henry glided back to the floor. What shall I do, Sir Henry, for penance? Henry didn't feel adequate telling someone else how to reconcile with the God of Light, especially when he himself felt so distant. But the earnestness of the boy's plea deserved a pious answer. Pray, he said. God always appreciates a humble prayer. Morning Lord above, Father Lucian exclaimed. I never thought I'd see the like. Ireena gaped in shock, and she searched Henry's face, unable to keep a smile from spreading across her lips. Henry, who are you? I'm Henry, he said, giving a shy smile in return. The other children came up to him, asking to touch his wings. You must be an Azimar, said Father Lucian. A what? Ireena asked. A what? Henry asked. No one had ever explained the miraculous manifestation of his wings, or his ability to pull the sword from the stone. He thought it was all luck, and everyone else thought it was providence. The father continued to stare. An Azimar is blessed from birth by God to do his will in the world. The Morning Lord has favored you, Henry. At least now Henry had a name for his condition. He turned back to Jeske. This older boy, Melvin, Henry asked. Where is he? His name's Milivoj, and he just walked in. That's him over there. Jeske pointed to a dark-haired teenager who stood ogling at the Azamar. Henry spread his wings and flew over to him. Milivoj dropped his basket, loaves of bread spilling to the floor. Hello, Milivoj. I'm Henry, and I need you to tell me what happened to the bones of Saint Andral. The coffin-maker's shop was in the Arasek stockyard. Henry and Ireena made their way there as soon as Milivoj confessed. Of course it would be a coffin-maker who took the bones, said Henry. Milivoj did say the coffin-maker paid him to steal the bones, Ireena pointed out. What do you think he wants with them? Hell if I know, Henry said as he knocked on the door of the shop. Go away, the strained voice of a man said from within. We're here to see We're here to see the coffin-maker, Henry said, botching the name. We are closed. Go away and come back later. When do you open? Ireena asked. Later, just later. Whatever it is you need, something for an adult or child, I can make it later. Now please go away. We can't do that, Henry said, banging on the door. And we're not leaving until you... The door opened suddenly, and an older man with a thick grey beard stuck his head out. All right, I'll let you in, he said in a hushed voice. But please be quiet. Henry and Ireena stepped in and were led to a small room with meager furnishings. Ireena sat on the only chair available, and Henry stood with crossed arms. The man got out a small notebook and pencil with trembling hands, perspiration dripping down his creased brow. Tell me what you need. I'll write it down, and then you can be on your way. First, I'm Sophie, and this is Henry, said Ireena, speaking quietly. Ah, Henry, good name, he said, forcing a toothy grin. I'm Henrik Vanderwood. Henrik is Barovian for Henry. Now what kind of coffin do you need? We're not here about coffins, Henry said. We're trying to find something very important that went missing from the church. What? The man's voice went up an octave. I know nothing. Henry cast his divine sense, and immediately felt the presence of evil. He looked at the coffin-maker and asked in a calm voice, Why are there undead creatures in this shop? The shaky man wrung his hands. It's not my fault. It's not. You two should go, or you'll get us all killed. We're not leaving until you tell us, Henry said. Henrik's eyes darted from side to side and up to the ceiling, focusing on nothing. All right, I'll tell you, but then you must leave. A month ago, there was a man who wanted me to store some of his crates in my shop. He said he'd pay good money, and he did. I didn't think anything of it at the time, just good business. What I didn't know is what he was storing. The first night those crates were here, they emerged. He leaned in and whispered, Vampires! He pressed his white-knuckled hands together. They've been making me do things for them, saying that if I don't obey, they'll kill me. They told me about the sacred bones in St. Andral's church. They ordered me to find them and take them. I had no choice. Where are the bones now? Henry asked. I don't know. Who knows what those creatures have done with them? Don't ask me. Now please go. You do realize you've endangered everyone in that church. Henry's voice was calm but cold. Without those bones, the vampires could just walk in and kill anyone sheltering within its walls. Children, families. "I told you, they would have killed me." "This whole town is at risk because of your cowardice," Henry said in disgust. Henrik buried his face in his hands. Henry whispered to Ireena, "Go find Rowan and Navara. Bring them here while I stay with Henrik. We need to clear this place out." Ireena nodded and left. Henry sat with Henrik, and the coffin-maker grew more fidgety with every passing minute. After a couple hours, Henry knew something was wrong. What was keeping Ireena so long? Rictavio's wagon was just across from the coffin shop, and the Blue Water Inn was nearby. Those were the places where he assumed Rowan might be. But what about Navara? The sheriff must have assigned her somewhere. The sheriff? Isaac Strasny. That was a name Henry didn't easily forget. A sickening sensation hit Henry's gut like a punch. Would Ireena have gone to the Baron's mansion to ask about Navara? Henry remembered the room he had seen in the Baron's house. Isaac's room. He remembered the dolls with red hair like Ireena's. "Fuck," Henry said. He ran out the door, yelling to Henrik that he would be back. He hoped to God he was overreacting, but disturbing thoughts probed his mind. He pictured the first time Isaac had met Ireena, that lecherous grin, those hungry eyes that devoured her. Then Henry recalled Navara's words. "I'm sorry to say this, Ireena, but you have another creepy admirer. All day Sheriff Isaac asked me about you, and every time he mentioned your name, he'd lick his lips." Fuck, 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 thought Henry. He tried to console himself. Ireena was strong and capable. She was a fighter. But Isaac was big, and he had that monstrous clawed hand. Henry's armor clanked as he ran past shops and houses, hoping, praying he wasn't too late. After what seemed an eternity, he made it to the front door of the mansion. Not wanting to give warning in case his fears were justified, Henry let himself in. Thankful the door was unlocked. He ran into the house, bounded up the stairs, and stopped at Isaac's bedroom. Breathing heavily, he put his ear up to the door. A muffled cry came from beyond. It was enough. When Henry kicked open the door, he found a lurid scene playing out before him. Ireena was gagged, and her blouse was torn down the front. Isaac was in the process of tying her to the bedposts. She yelled through the gag when she saw Henry, and Isaac turned. The sheriff's eyes darted to one corner of the room. Henry, following their gaze, saw an axe leaning at the door beside him. Isaac lunged for it. Without hesitation, Henry grabbed the axe, tossed it out into the hallway, and drew his own sword. Then he rounded on Isaac and caught the brute with the tip of his blade. But the blow was poorly placed, and the point merely sliced open the big man's shoulder. Though blood was gushing down his chest, Isaac did not slow in the least. Henry made to strike again, but the sheriff grabbed Henry's arm with his clawed hand, pinning it against the wall. The claw was impossibly strong. Isaac punched Henry in the face over and over, until blood poured from the paladin's nose. Henry could not catch his breath as the fists rained down with relentless fury. But somehow he managed to land a knee to Isaac's groin, making him buckle and release his grip. Henry's freed hand cracked the bald man's scalp with the pommel of his sword, and the sheriff stumbled back. Seeing the axe lying in the hall, Isaac bolted and grabbed it. With a snarl, he raised the weapon above his head and turned to strike, but at that moment, Henry ran him through. The big man looked down at the sword protruding from his chest. He slumped to his knees and struggled to breathe as blood bubbled up from his mouth. Henry planted a boot against Isaac's shoulder, using it as leverage to wrench the blade free. Isaac fell, and Henry let his sword fly, hacking the sheriff's body again and again until the walls were painted with crimson splatter and chunks of flesh. Only when Isaac's corpse had been reduced to a heap of charnel rubbish did he finally relent. A distressing mumble from the bed brought Henry back to his senses, and he ran to untie Ireena.
"Henry!"
She clung to him, shaking all over.
I thought he was going to—"
"It's okay," Henry said, holding her, blood trickling down his chin. "That bastard's dead. You're safe now." He touched the bruises on her wrists, and a soft glow flowed from his hands. "Are you hurt anywhere else?"
"I don't think so. Just my nerves."
A scream issued from the hall, where a servant stood aghast at the carnage.
"What's going on here?"
demanded the burgomaster, as he too came to the door.
"Baron Volakovich," Henry said through bloody teeth, "you have a lot of explaining to do."
When Henry's friends had been summoned, Vasily was the first to arrive at the scene.
"I'm glad you're all right,"
Vasily said to Ireena, after she assured him she was fine. He scowled when he saw the dolls sitting neatly on the shelves, each one bearing an uncanny resemblance to Ireena. He looked down with disgust at the remains of Isaac Strozny. That man didn't have a soul. The burgomaster held a kerchief to his mouth as he watched the servants clean up the mess. He urged them all to go to the study where they could talk without distraction. Once they were in the study, Navara appeared, out of breath.
"Wow, you're a fast runner, Vasily, way ahead of me."
Then, looking to Henry and Ireena, asked,
"Is everyone all right?"
"Everyone is not all right,"
declared the Baron.
"Sheriff Isaac has been murdered, and now I have no one to uphold the law."
"Baron Volakovich," Henry said, restraining his anger, "your sheriff abducted and assaulted Sophie."
"Ireena,"
said Ireena, dropping the alias.
"My name is Ireena Kolyana, and I have been wronged."
She stared the Baron in the eyes until he looked away. "Isaac Strozny was a sick bastard who had no right being a sheriff," Henry said. "He was mentally deranged. And what was with that clawed hand of his? It looked demonic."
"Isaac was a force to be reckoned with, which is why I hired him," said the Baron defensively. "I couldn't control what he did outside of work. How Isaac amused himself was his own business."
"He was negligent even in his work," Henry said. "As we speak, there's a nest of vampire spawn in the coffin-maker's shop just down the road. They slipped in on your precious sheriff's watch." A gasp and a murmur escaped them all. Henry turned his back on the Baron and spoke to his friends. "I don't know how many there are, but I could sense undead when Ireena and I went into the shop. We went looking for the bones of St. Andral. They're missing. That's why the church isn't consecrated."
"Did you find the bones?"
Navara asked. "Not yet, but we need to go there now, before the vampires do something." Henry winced as pain shot through his head and down his neck. His face had taken a pounding.
"Vampires?"
Vasily gulped.
"Don't worry, Vasily."
Navara gave him a bold smile.
"We'll take care of those pests."
"Vampires?" the Baron blurted. "Bloody hell! What are we going to do? I need a new sheriff."
He looked Henry up and down.
You're a force to be reckoned with. This may be a bit unconventional, but I'd like to appoint you as the town's new sheriff."
Henry could have strangled the man, but instead he accepted the offer.
"Wonderful," said the Baron. "Tomorrow you and the deputy will be in charge of organizing the Festival of the Blazing Sun. We only have 1 day to prepare. The festival's in 2 days.
"We can do that after we clear out the vampires," Henry said.
Yes, 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 said the Baron, waving his hand. Now, if you don't mind, it's very late, and I'm going to bed.
He did not wish them good night, or give any formal farewell, as he left the study. Henry inhaled and looked at Ireena. Her blue eyes looked tired, but she stood with composure, her hand pressed to her bodice, concealing her torn blouse. "Ireena," Henry said, "you're good with a sword. I've seen you fight, but you can be better. I had training in the army that neither you nor your brother have had. I could teach you." "I'd like that," she said. "You're strong and smart. You'll learn fast. Before you know it, you'll be able to take me out." "Don't worry, Henry. I'll make it painless." She was joking, but she was so exhausted the delivery came off as deadpan. "Too bad you don't have any magic," Navarra said, flexing her hands. "I could show you a thing or two." "I think we should go back to the inn and get some sleep," said Rowan. The others jumped. "Good heavens! Have you been there this whole time?" Navarra asked her. "Long enough to hear that Henry's also working for that lunatic," Rowan said. "And what was that about clearing out vampires?" "At the coffin shop. We should go there now." Henry's words were slow. "Maybe you should wait until morning," Vasily suggested. "Once you've rested, you could all end up hurt or worse if you're not prepared." "Vasily's right," Ireena said. "Henrik told us the vampires have been in Vallaki for a month. They haven't gone on a killing spree yet. I think we can wait one more night." Henry shook his head. "The church was protected for that month. Milivaj didn't give the bones to the coffin maker until 5 days ago." Henry stopped himself, feeling Ireena leaning on him for support. She had been through enough today. "But you're right," he said. "Rest is more important right now." They left the mansion, said goodnight to Vasily, and went to their room at the Blue Water Inn. Henry's sore head hit the pillow. He touched his face, using magic to take the edge off the pain. He hated the idea of working for that imbecile burgomaster, but being sheriff was the best way to help the town. With any luck, he could search for a new burgomaster to run Vallaki, someone who cared about the people. But first, they needed to take care of the vampires. Henry fell asleep. He did not see Ireena sit down at the chair beside him, but Rowan did. She saw Ireena take her pack and pull out needle and thread. Then she grabbed Henry's cloak and began sewing. She finished her work well after midnight, finally falling asleep with his cloak in her hands, a white lily embroidered on the edge.